Yo, 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 welcome to another episode of Insta Chat with the journalist, yo, because I'm a journalist. So, yeah. Welcome. Oh, wow, Jakey, you're on time. That's dope. So, yeah, this is my weekly chat with people
Always
in
on
the
time.
house music industry.
I'm
Hello.
always I'm always on time.
Yeah, I know you're very punctual, hey? Very un-African.
I'm always on time.
Yeah, no, how you doing? Are you good?
I'm good. Thanks. I'm really good. How are you?
I'm relaxed, man, taking it easy, one day at a time, keeping busy by documenting the house culture, which is
Yeah.
one of my missions on planet Earth, you know?
Okay.
So So yeah, man, just a bit of a background about what this whole thing is about. So I saw that the house music space, there aren't enough platforms for artists to just speak about the industry. There's a lot of platforms where people DJ, a lot
Mm.
of live streams, but nobody really records interviews and post them, and let people know what's up. Nobody really gets to talk to people that are, behind the scenes, or nobody really gets behind the decks, and so this is what the platform is about, man, and that's it. It's just about us having conversations. And so we both have a mutual friend, DJ Melita, and she told me that, what, I have to have you on. And I'm like, what, I've actually been following this lady's career for a while. I actually play your songs.
Oh
uh
wow.
yeah. And for some
That's
reason, I always thought that you're American. I don't know why.
Why
I always
do
thought that you.
people say this to me all the time? I was talking to a producer day before yesterday, a couple of days ago, and he was like, "When I first heard your songs, I thought you were white." I don't know if people think that's a compliment or but it's the
Mm,
most bizarre thing, and people have always said that to me. Like,
mm.
yeah, and they sometimes are even they even look disappointed when they say I'm not. I'm just like, okay, I'm from Zim. Nice meeting you too.
That's crazy. I didn't think that you were white, because of the soul, you know. I mean, you can hear when a black person sings, the soul. And
Yeah?
I just thought that you were just American, black American from Brooklyn, or Chicago,
Oh
or
wow,
something like
okay.
that. Yeah. But let's put it out there. Let's let everyone know, where you're from and what you are about before we carry on.
Yeah, sure. I'm from Zim, originally from Zimbabwe. Um, I've lived in South Africa for about um 10 years, 12 years. Actually, no, 12 years, I lie.
Mm.
Before that, I was in the UK. Yeah, man, I've been doing music since, well, kind of like professionally, like singing house music since 2012, 2011.
Mhm.
Since then, I've worked with quite a few people. I was about to use their real names. I always call people by their real names. Enoo, Napa, the Capo, Sisters, a bunch of
Mm.
other people. Satellite, who's from Angola, good
Mm.
friend of mine. Yeah, and a whole like group of people. Freebota from Germany. So I've had like a nice sort of mixed bag of experience in terms of working as a vocalist. Like I like to do different styles of house music.
Mm.
Even though people know me for Afro, but I've done like other styles like disco house, soulful house, deep house.
Mm.
So I suppose that's why I call myself a house music vocalist. And then I have my record label, which is Bae Electronica. It's coming up on 5 years old now, I think. And
Wow.
on that, I released mostly music that I work on with other producers. So um, yeah, I released Mwanangu on my label, which was nominated for a Sama. Inu's remix was nominated for summer. I released Feel It Now, which was done with Cornelius, and then which was later released on Get Physical. Yeah, so there's the label side, then I do these parties, which are now on hold because of coronavirus. Yeah, and I just do a bunch of stuff, but mostly like around house music, working with women in the house music space as well. Mostly DJs, and I'm starting to work a bit more with producers. So like my next project that's coming out in a few months, I hope, was produced by Miss D.
Miss D.
Yeah, Miss D. So yeah, so I'm, working on a few things here and there, but that's mostly what I do: sing, run the label-ish, work with other women, and just sort of just do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and I realized that you actually once sent me an email, when I was still at Skipani,
Oh,
for yeah, with for Time to Dry, I think, when she
yeah,
dropped.
you guys covered that when we released that.
Yeah, you actually sent it to me, and I'm like,
Ah, nice.
you actually sent me an email, and I remember when I got the email, I immediately, I heard the music, and I was like, yo, this stuff is hot, and I immediately published the article because it was that hot.
Yes, I
And
did. I saw that. I thought you were still there.
I just left, man. But that's a story for another day.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I just left. But yeah. But the interesting thing is, I think I remember the press release. It was you guys. It was about you mentioned women in house music, and you mentioned that it was like an indie label. That you guys were working together and all that. And I was intrigued because house is such a male dominated field, and I don't want to make it in the interview too much about female versus male DJs, but I just thought it was interesting to see a boss lady in the space that's occupied by men, and I just want to know, like, so far, what are the advantages of being female in a male dominated space, and then what are the disadvantages?
Are there any advantages? No, they are actually. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, like depending on how you position yourself, right? Depending on how you position yourself in the industry as a woman, there are many advantages in the sense that, by virtue of the fact that there aren't that many of us, and people are now starting to become a little bit more conscious about why it's important to empower women, to give them opportunities. You'll find that there's more opportunities out there for women, at least for people who are interested in sort of making the space a bit more equitable. So I think in that sense, it's a good advantage, because now is the time, and people are getting more and more conscientized to why it's important to empower women, not just as sort of DJs or vocalists, but in all spheres of the music industry, which is great. Also, I think a great advantage is having, or if you can, when you do find a community of women who are in the same space, who are supportive, who are driven, and you build sort of a wonderful community. It's affirming, and at the same time, it's almost a lot easier to work with and sort of build relationships and get opportunities from women as opposed to men, because you still have a lot of men who think, oh, I'm not going to book her because she's a woman, I'm not just going to book anybody because they're women. Whereas women understand that we are talented. We're not saying book us because we're women, we're saying book us because we're talented, and acknowledge that we have not had these opportunities in the same way as men have. So being a woman and sort of tapping into different networks, that involve other women, I've found it's a lot easier to sort of get opportunities and build your network if you're networking with women, which is quite amazing considering that, again, more and more of us are starting to occupy certain positions, you know. In terms of the cons or the disadvantages, wow, there's so many. I mean, you know, but we don't let them bring us down. Obviously, you know, there's the sort of time, you know, since the beginning of time, once, you know, the sexism, the misogyny, you know, all of that, you have to deal with that on a daily basis. You also have to deal with the fact that, you know, people discount you by virtue of your gender, not because of, you know, your abilities, by just seeing you. I mean, even in the way that people talk about how women produce, or for vocalists, it's like the other day I was on Twitter and someone was like, oh, a vocalist just goes into the studio 1 to 2 hours. They don't do a lot of work, you know?
Wow.
I'm like, what?
That's crazy.
Like, you know, for someone to be able to just come in and like freestyle on a beat for like an hour or two, let's say, like that's a skill that you would have developed over time, you know. A lot of vocalists are trained, they put money into that, they put their energy into that. So, you know, we're constantly like confronting people who have these very archaic notions about the value of our work, you know, because we're not twiddling on technological things. And even when it comes to women as well, you know, like we were talking about Tandy earlier. I mean, there's so many people who, when we were promoting that very album, that EP, I mean, everyone was like, are you sure she's the one who produced this? And I was like, yes. You know, there's like this notion that women don't know how to use technological equipment. There's also, you know, even with DJs, a lot of people think women pre-record their mixes, you know, so there's like all these negative stereotypes that you have to deal with and you have to confront on a daily basis, you know, as a woman in the industry. And you would think that, you know, it's 2020, you know, we don't think like that or speak like that, but we do, you know, confront this on a daily basis. So, I mean, yeah, I think for me, that's like one of the sort of biggest disadvantages. And then, of course, when people do give you the space, there's like sort of expectations, you know, you should look sexy, or, you know, you should be a particular type of woman that they want to see, even when they do have or offer women opportunities. So there really isn't a lot of space for different types of looking women, you know, so people want to see one type of woman. And the funny thing is, like, even if you are the type that they like, it then becomes, oh, you're sexualizing yourself. So it's like, it's so weird. But yeah, like I said, you know, it is what it is. It is what it is.
But you know what they say, man, you know, you can't make everybody happy.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you should mention that, because I noticed with like you know, women in hip hop, it's standard that, you know, most of them that are commercial or successful have to be sexy, you know, they have to show skin. Is it like that with the house culture as well?
Well, I think in house music we have it a little bit different. You know, in the sense that there isn't too much of an emphasis on your looks, I guess, because I mean, even if I just think of all the vocalists that I know, you know, the vocalists that I know, they're like a good sort of range of type of woman, which is really amazing. I think it's great. But depending on which sort of subgenre of house music you're in, you could very well be a faceless person. So, for example, in soulful house music, the tradition is when you have a vocalist, you put the vocalist on the cover of the track. So if you can think of any, you know, sort of soulful house track, or even look at like a label like Quantize, for example. Like like if you think of their covers, they always have the vocalist on there. Whereas when you come to other genres like afro-house, you know, you can go so many years you know, as a vocalist, like I can think of, you know, a lot of vocalists who I know who I don't see on the covers, you know. So it's very interesting when you start to sort of pick it apart and look at the different ways in which women are represented. So it may not necessarily mean that, you know, you have to look sexy or you have to look in a particular way, but there are ways in which, you know, women are in essence erased, and also there are sort of expectations, you know. A lot of the time there's this expectation that because you're a vocalist, you need to be grateful. You just have to be so grateful that you know, this is your opportunity to work with this person or with that person. And there isn't like an appreciation for what you bring, you know, as an artist. So, I mean, we may not necessarily have that, but sometimes you do see it though, actually, with some vocalists who you can see and you know that, okay, you know, there's some vocalists for whom their outward appearance is something that people value, and they completely discount, you know, the talent and everything else that they bring, you know. I was having this conversation with my friend the other day, and I was saying to her, you know, she just happens to be a brilliant writer, you know, and we were talking about how, you know, in some ways house music isn't necessarily like the genre for that, because she writes these beautiful, amazing songs, but then people don't really, like, they don't pay attention. You know, they're not paying attention. It's like, and even the people who work with us, sometimes they don't really value that. They don't understand that skill, you know. So yeah, to answer your question, like, looks aren't really that, well, at least from what I've seen anyway, because for the most part, women, at least in Afro or other genres like deep house, unless it's like soulful or something like that, don't really end up on covers at all. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's really interesting. Helen says that, you know, as a female, you jump through all these hoops and they still don't pay women their rates. Do you have that problem?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Never mind, they pay you your rates. Like in house music, good luck if you get your fee for singing. Like yeah, that's a sore topic for me. Like I like yeah.
That's, you know what? It's sad that you should say that, because house music, you know, the movement itself, it's arguably the biggest in SA. You know, if you look at Amapiano and Afro House and all that. And, you know, the DJs are superstars, you know, like, but the vocalists are always complaining. And I'm like, you know, there's like a disconnect. There's a problem there. I don't know if we should, when is it going to be solved? If we should address it now or later. But you know what? I'm not going to put you in a spot.
I'm always ready to talk about that. Oh, I will talk about it. I will talk. Just ask me what you want to know. But I'm happy to talk about that.
No, just like, you know, how do vocalists, you know, especially female vocalists, make money? Because DJs get their money through bookings, right? And what happens is that most DJs don't travel around with the vocalist. So what do you think should be, what do you think should female vocalists do to you know, make bread for themselves?
Well, I mean, I think for the most part, it's not difficult to make money as a vocalist, right? The issue is it doesn't happen because there aren't any people don't ensure that you get what is owed to you, right?
Oh, I see.
So when people say vocalists in this country, you also have to make a distinction, I think, or I think it has to be very clear to people that when people say vocalist in South Africa, what you mean is someone who sings and writes.
Okay.
Song, right? So for the most part, a producer will send you a beat and say, please write or sing on the song. And yeah, so there's that distinction, right? So ordinarily what happens is, if someone writes a song and they get a session vocalist in to sing the song with their lyrics, they will pay that person, right?
Okay.
But somehow when it comes to vocalists, it becomes a very murky thing now, because I sing and I write. So typically, you know, you should be paying somebody for the singing part. And then there's also this whole other thing about how with house music vocalists, they come with a track record of hits and, you know, all of that. So they're their own sort of brand, as it were, you know. So that's also another consideration that people have to have or put into consideration when they're charging people, like for features, right? So there's that part, and then there's the writing part. The writing part where you write the lyrics and the melody, and that is your intellectual property, and then you get, you know, sort of your royalties from that and your publishing, right? So what tends to happen is you don't get paid for the singing, and then people will sometimes, actually for the most part, if depending on who you're working with, you'll get your royalties and your publishing in paper. You will get it. So like you have a contract and everything, and then the next minute it's time to now start collecting. Let's say the song does really well, right? And then it's time to start collecting royalties. And for the most part, depending on like what your catalog is like and how advanced you are in your career, you may or may not have a publisher, right? So if you do have a publisher, yeah, sure, they'll collect. But if you don't, sometimes it's in fact, for the most part, it's very difficult to get any remuneration for the work that you do. I mean, there are so many projects that I've done that I have not seen a single cent. Like,
and did they do well? Did the songs do
some
well?
of them did, others didn't. Some of them did, others didn't, you know? But then, of course, you have to register with SAMRO and whatever. So all of that other stuff you do. And if it gets played on radio, of course, you'll get that money. Or if it gets played on TV and all of that other stuff. But I think it's just the principle, right? And the stories keep coming up over and over again about how, you know, people do projects or they collaborate with people, but then there isn't any sort of transparency around what happens when this project starts to take off, right? And it starts to make money. And then you find that a lot of vocalists become very bitter and jaded because every single time you work with someone, it's the same story. Or like, for example, with me, I've had instances or experiences where like you do a project with someone, you don't know at this point when it's going to come out, right? Or when it's going to be released. And you wake up one morning, the next day there's a post on Instagram or Facebook saying this album or this thing is out, right? So you don't know that this has happened. You have not had a chance to register with SAMRO, whatever. Then you go and you register your stuff with SAMRO, and then it turns out, you know, that this person has registered the song with their name on it as a writer, and, you know, like dodgy, you know. So there's that. So there's a massive sort of discrepancy around how people see vocalists in terms of like what the perceived value is, and then sort of in real life, how that value sort of translates to real life. So to answer your question, if a vocalist wants to make money, she should charge. This is what I have been advising any and everybody who asks me how they're going to make their money. They should charge, because typically what happens is if the song does well, like you said, they will not get opportunities to perform it, which is fine, because a lot of producers think that the song belongs to them, which is okay. But then if you consider that that song is part of what allows you or enables you to get more bookings, to increase your fee, to win awards and all of that, you need to take all of that into consideration, and then the vocalist needs to be compensated for that. So I would say, you know, as far as you can, charge people, and that depends, you know, like I found in South Africa, it's very difficult to have this conversation with people. But when I work with people from labels outside of South Africa, it's an easy thing. It's a very easy thing. They will message you and they'll be like, we want you to do this track. Here's the track. Here's how much we're going to pay you. It's not even a conversation that you have to have, right? It's like, this is how much we're going to pay you. Your splits are this. Your publishing is this. You know, it's very, very straightforward. So I think part of the reason why there is this almost in a sense resistance, or you're getting this consistent you know, situation where vocalists aren't being remunerated or treated in a way that is commensurate with the sort of contributions that they have or make, is because there is a lack of education about, firstly, things like copyright, you know, like what is it, how do you split a song, and then what happens when you release a song, and in terms of like, you know, paying people out and all of that. So, and this is across the board, not just with like young producers who you can even excuse and say, okay, maybe they don't know, but like all the way to the top, you know, where you end up having, you know, like big artists who are quite happy to just take advantage of young producers and young vocalists and pay them absolutely no money, and then just like take all the royalties and the publishing for their songs. So there is this massive, I think, problem where we're not being very open about how to conduct these relationships in a way that is both ethical and equitable, you know, that's fair for everybody, because the people who benefit from it the most are quite happy to have it like that, so that, you know, if you remain ignorant, then they can always be, you know, they can always be fine. And that's why people tend to often look for new vocalists all the time, because the moment a vocalist like catches onto it and she starts asking for money, or she gets a manager, you start hearing people saying things like, oh, yeah, that one is difficult. No, she's difficult. The other day I was on Twitter and someone said, we were actually talking about this very thing about paying vocalists. And he was like, I got in touch with a vocalist and her manager said to me, oh, this and this and this DJ was okay with these terms, so you should be okay with them. And he had a problem with that. He had a problem with that. Another guy was like, oh, the minute you pay vocalists, you get like a half-assed, you know, it becomes like a half-assed thing. Like, so it's like, yeah, so you're dealing with people who have absolutely like no regard for, yeah, for like the value of our work, you know. So then now when it comes to start having conversations about remuneration, then it's like, oh my gosh, you know, like, why do I have to pay you? You know, and unfortunately, a lot of people make compromises, you know, or should I say, fortunately, I don't know. But I always say, you know, just stick to your guns. You'll always find people who will work with you, or at the very least, if you're not going to make money up front, make sure that everything on the back end is watertight. You know, just make sure your contracts are done. Make sure, you know, when you register your stuff, it's all above board, you know, that kind of stuff, because you can actually make money if you're a vocalist who, you know, makes like great songs and writes and sings great songs. You can make great money, you know, with your publishing. You can also make good money as a performer. So I would really like to encourage a lot more vocalists to perform. As much as you can get the PHX from people, because that in itself is another story. But you know, and people often say that vocalists should build their own brand, which is also a fair assessment, you know. So if you have relationships with producers and it's a reciprocal thing, perhaps you know, get them to produce some stuff for you, and put out your own original tracks. But for me, that doesn't negate any of the work that vocalists do as features. You know, most people say, like, again, someone was saying the other day that, you know, a vocalist can have like 40 features and then they they have 2 original songs. To me, that's fine. I mean, Monique Bingham has built her whole entire brand on doing features. That doesn't mean she gets any less work. That doesn't mean, you know, she's not a great performer. So I think, yeah, when it comes to things like that, like, charge if you can. If not, make sure everything on the back end is solid. And another thing that I would advise vocalists to do or not to do is, if somebody doesn't do it right the first time, don't work with them ever again. Like, I think part of the problem is that, you know, we work with people and then it doesn't go, like, and I'm talking about like the contractual stuff, not in terms of the songs, because there's no determining how successful a song is going to be. But if you work with someone the first time and you don't get your contract, you don't get your PA tracks, you're constantly fighting about X, Y, Z, then say, okay, it's fine. And then you move on and you find people who you can build good working relationships with, time and again, who understand what you're trying to do. And it's a reciprocal thing. Like, I've got, you know, friends who I've been working with for a while. I do a track for them, they do a track for me, you know. So, like, build those kinds of relationships. I often feel that, you know, as vocalists, we feel a lot of pressure to, like, first of all, to release songs, and then to work with certain people. You don't have to work with those people, especially if they're not going to do right by you, you know, in terms of what is owed to you. It doesn't matter who they are. I mean, I've turned down collaborations with a lot of people who I initially thought I wanted to work with. And then when they came to me and they were like, oh, no, we don't want to give you this or we don't want to give you that. I'm like, actually, then why are we talking? You know, why are we talking then? Yeah, you know, so I think just having a sort of a clear vision about what it is that you want to do and what you want to achieve. I mean, we live in an amazing time now where you don't necessarily, you do to some extent, okay, need to have resources and all. But for the most part, if you make great music and you exploit it well, you know, there's no reason for you to have to put yourself in a position where you are being exploited by someone else for their career to benefit more than yours. There's absolutely no reason for you to do that. So yeah, that was a really long
answer. well said. No, but you know, you answered my question very, very well. And I have no follow-up questions. You know, I just have a comment, which is like, you know, vocalists. It seems like it's a very challenging industry for you guys, because I can imagine, you know, like a big DJ sends you a DM to like, hey, you know, I like your vibe. Here's a beat. You know, then you have to decide, okay, when do I talk business? Do I talk now or later? You know, and that's how people get screwed over.
Now, always have that conversation first. I like, when I started, I used to do the whole thing where you do the song, you write the song, you record the song, and then we discuss later. No, if you send me a track and you want me to work on it, we talk about business first. Because what tends to happen is you get to the end of that process and you're so excited, you know, and the song sounds great. And now you're thinking, oh, but if I release the song, you know, it's going to be a feather in my cap. So I don't even wait to get to all of that, because that's all energy that I'm expending that I could be using writing another song for someone else or for myself, you know? So always, like, I mean, obviously get through the hi, how are you, this and that. But then the minute they start talking about working together, get in there, talk about your terms and conditions. I always ask, what are the terms and conditions? And sometimes you find that, like for me, sometimes it's that when someone sends me a track and I really, really like the track, like it's always negotiable. Like, especially when you're working with producers who are very talented but obviously don't have money. to pay you,
Mm.
right? And that is totally fine. That's okay. Like you can do like trade exchanges with people, because often producers, or mostly anybody in the creative sector anyway, is a multi-slasher, is a slasher, you know, like, so like I'm a vocalist and I have a day job and I do this and I do this, like there's like a whole bunch of other things that I do. So somewhere in there you can find a skill that you can trade with that person, even if it's just like, if they are a producer, you can ask them to mix a track for you in exchange, you know. So it doesn't always have to be about money, because for the most part, until you get to a point where you're like churning out big hits, you know. And also sometimes, yeah, you do get people approach you and you're not like a very popular vocalist, and those people are obviously like more popular than you. That does happen. But I mean, like generally what tends to happen is you have like young producers who often don't have a release or have a release, and it's like 2 or 3 releases into their career, and they're approaching you, and sometimes they're like really amazing, you know, but they can't afford to pay you. Then that's fine. Then we're talking about splits, and we're talking about publishing, and we're talking about, and one thing that I've noticed, like a lot of producers who are in that position will come to me, like I had some guy the other day say to me, oh, it's okay, I'll give you 60%. Right? And I mean, who doesn't want 60% or 70%, you know? But it's not fair. You know, it's not fair.
So what works for you?
What works for me is what's fair, you know, which is 50%, 50%. Like I mean, there's a lot of like talk about, you know, like if we're excluding things like having to spend money on the track and whatever, like if you're not paying me to do the track and we're working on some other kind of exchange, like you should always get your splits, you know, you should always get your splits. So yeah, so sometimes people won't have the money to pay you, and that's fine. You just need to make the decisions based on what you think you're going to get out of that. That's not monetary. So like for me, a lot of the decision making that I make on tracks is first of all that it's like, what's the kind of deal that I'm getting outside of, you know, cash, whatever. And then also like the kind of music that the person makes, you know, because I've always been a fan of working with producers who make great music, who are sort of like on the cutting edge of like Afro and Afro tech, you know, guys like Enoo, guys like Kisusa, you know, like those are the kinds of people like Carrie and the Soul, you know, like, and these are like people who are making like great music. And sometimes it's just like, do I want to work with this person because they're making great music, they're making music that I really enjoy, you know? And then of course, like some people may have access to other sort of audiences that you don't have, you know, so it might be about that. So even if it's if they can't afford to pay you your fee, you may be thinking, okay, but maybe this person has a big profile in the deep house scene or whatever scene, and you're just thinking, oh, I want to grow my audience. Something that I've started doing a lot lately is like, instead of getting a fee, if someone can't pay me a fee and they have an entertainment property, I request that in the contractual agreement, or it's like part of the agreement that we make. So if you have an entertainment property and you want me to do a song for you, you have to put me on the bill for your show.
Oh,
like,
I see. So
yeah,
so if I have a show, you know, I have to book you. That's very
yeah,
smart.
yeah, you have to. And if you don't, then fine. I'm not doing the song. Like that, I will even turn down money for a show. I'll turn
Really?
down money for a show. Yeah. If you have
Okay.
like 2 or 3 shows, you have 2 or 3 entertainment properties, like last year, I played a show in Netherlands for Randy, and that was the deal. That was the deal. And
Wow.
the same amount of money, actually, that it cost him to fly me there, put me up for a few days, is the same amount of money he would have paid me
For a feature.
for a song.
Makes
But
sense.
it made more sense for me to do a show in the Netherlands at Liberation, which is like a 7-year-old Afro/house music, entertainment property where pretty much everybody who's done Afro house, or most people who do Afro house, have played it. So sometimes you have to be really smart about it. You don't always have to demand money, but there are different ways in which you can grow who you are and what you're trying to do. Like, so for me, like last year, a big focus of my year was performing. So I wasn't really concerned about releasing, to the extent that even people who approached me for releases, it was a case of, do you have an entertainment property? Do they have an entertainment property or not?
Yeah. Can you put me on the lineup or not?
Yeah. Or do you
interesting.
have a mate who has an entertainment property that he can put me on? Like, do you have a network? Yes. If you have a network, I'll do a song for you.
Okay,
I'll do a
that's
song
great.
for you. And often if they have an entertainment property, they're paying people anyway. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the event that you're going to play at for them has to be for free. No. If they're paying people, then you must get paid.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like, there's different ways to do it. So like for me, it's a big thing. Like, anyone who approaches me now and you have an entertainment property and you don't want to put me on the bill, on the lineup, then we're not having a discussion, because what's the point? Why would you want me to sing on your song but I can't play at your event? Especially if it's an event for house music DJs. Like, I had someone say to me, oh, well, I can't put you on that lineup because, the focus of that event is house, is DJs. And I'm like, but all these fucking DJs have vocalists on their tracks. So how can I not come and sing at this event? It doesn't make sense, because they go there and they play your music. They play the music I make. They play the music Sio sings. They play the music that Toshi sings. But for some reason, we can't get on the bill. It's the most bizarre thing.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense to me. So now that's my other little fight that I'm fighting on the side. And typically, I've been very fortunate that I haven't had to rely on your typical sort of Afro or house music events to be able to perform. Like, I can perform pretty much, at most places. But yeah, when it comes to house music, I'm really trying to be a little bit more discerning, because earlier on in my career, I used to, like, people will send me a beat and I'm on it, I'm singing, I'm doing this, until I realized that actually it's not working for me. And this is not to say that there aren't any people in the industry who do all these things that, I'm saying most people should do. There are a lot of people who, when they have like a song with a vocalist, they'll invite them to sing, there are other promoters. There are promoters who put vocalists on their lineups. There are people who do that. There are producers and DJs who support women. Like, I have a very nice group of friends who are very supportive of not just myself, but other women who work in the industry, as DJs. They either mentor them or, help them out with their productions, or, recommend them to people. Like, so sometimes it's like the ways in which you can support and empower women are just so different, and it's just dependent on where you are, what your corner is. right? Like you're a journalist. You know, a good way to support women is to write about more women.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, find their stories, write about them, because there are so many. I mean, there are so many, and it really amazes me sometimes, you know, especially with DJs who are women, when people say, "Oh, well, you know, I don't know that many DJs," and there's so many. Oh my
There's
gosh,
a
like
lot.
in South Africa,
There's a lot.
tons,
There's a lot.
tons of
Do
women,
you do
and
you think?
they play well.
I always ask this question. Do you think South Africa has too many DJs?
You know, that might just be the thing. It might just be the thing, man. Because, and this is what someone was saying to me over the weekend, last weekend, when we were talking, because he was saying to me, you know, you're like, you haven't released something in so long, people have completely forgotten about you, right? So I was like, oh, I have released some stuff, but just maybe not stuff that like became wide-reaching as it did in previous years. So like last year, I did release a couple of tunes, and they weren't even Afro actually. So I think that's probably why. And he was like, "There's so much competition in South Africa," and I was like, "That is so true. It's so true." I mean, I think of myself even as a vocalist, and it's not that I compete with people. I'm not speaking in the context of competition, but even if I just think of like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, you know, who was in the scene at the time, and then I look at who is in the scene now, you know, like it's almost as if it keeps refreshing, which is great. That's the one thing. You know, but then it also shows you that people don't actually, sometimes they don't last that long.
Yeah.
You know, they don't last that long. They really don't. Even producers, there's just like a few people who I know, okay, like 5 years ago when I started, these people were there and now they're here, you know. So yeah, to answer your question, I think maybe there are I don't know if there are too many DJs in South Africa, but there are a lot. There are a lot.
Yeah, has a question. What do you think is the future of female DJs after COVID-19?
After COVID, sure. I don't even know if we can say after COVID, you know, at least for the foreseeable future. You know, it looks like we're going to be living with COVID for a while. And one of the things that I was really like cognizant of when this whole thing started was that, you know, especially with like the live streaming and, you know, stuff like that, it really became very apparent that, you know, things like access to equipment is a privilege, you know? Whereas before, not that we had access to it easily, but just being able to play, for example. You were able to play and you could access CDJs, right? But now you're finding a lot of people, like I remember at the very beginning, like when people started doing streams, you could see all these DJs with CDJs in their house or wherever. And then when it became like a really strict sort of lockdown, things like access to equipment became really, really stark, you know? It became like, do you have CDJs? If you don't have CDJs, you're not live streaming because you can't go to a club or you can't go to... I remember one of my mates was trying to do a live stream and she didn't have CDJs and we were trying to find CDJs and we couldn't get CDJs. And the people who we did find who had CDJs lived in gated communities and she couldn't get in, you know? So it's like, when we think about the future, we're thinking about things like access, you know, to not only just data, we think about access to equipment, very, very important. But I think one of the biggest opportunities that women who DJ have at this point in time is things like controllers. So they're not very popular here for some reason. Well, they are. I think they are gaining some sort of prominence, actually. Let me not say that. They are, but I think what's different between say some place like South Africa and countries in other parts of the continent is that we look down upon controllers.
Yeah.
We look down upon controllers. Like we look at controllers
because people say you're cheating when you play with controllers.
Exactly. But then even here in South Africa, like, but more especially because I've traveled to different parts of the continent, and I've noticed that because they don't have sort of not easy, but like sort of access to CDJs. Like if you go to some countries, like my friend who lives in Uganda, often talks about how there's like pretty much like one or two like CDJs, and then and they're very expensive to rent. So what tends to happen is people will buy controllers, and you'll see that a lot of women specifically buy them, and because of that they've started DJing. And even now with the lockdowns, I mean, there's been so many women who I've seen who are playing like festivals with their controllers, and they're getting booked because they have access to this equipment that people look down upon. And and I don't see a lot of guys picking up a controller. Like it's just, I just don't see them doing it. It's like even the people who I know, they're like, controller, no. So I think for women, the opportunity is there. I think we're going to see this more and more, specifically because after, or at least once we get to a point where we can start playing live again, I don't think we're going to have as many venues as we have now.
That's true.
We're not going to have as many venues as we had before. So yeah, I think it's very important for women who are DJs to seize this moment. It's difficult, yes, but there are opportunities. There are opportunities, and the nice thing about having something like a controller is you are in control of when you can live stream on your Instagram for 30 minutes. You are in control of when you can do a mix. Like it's like, and people are gonna have to like eventually let go of some of those rigid ways of thinking.
What do you feel? How do you feel? Sorry to cut you, but how do you feel about DJs that sync the tracks?
I don't know. I'm not a DJ. I don't know. Does it sound good? Does it sound good?
Yeah, basically the software does everything for you.
Okay, as long as it sounds good. This is what I'm saying, is we need to let go of these things because, I say this as somebody who used to also think that controllers were like, like nobody should be playing on a controller type thing. And then I went to Zambia a couple of years ago for a project with work, and it was a project that had to do with women who are DJs, right? So I spent an extra night there after the end of the project, and one of the DJs who was on this project invited me to go and spend the night on the town with her and see, the city or whatever. And she was playing like 2 or 3 gigs. So I ended up going to like a festival, and then I ended up going to like a club. And the club specifically was very interesting because I got there and there were no CDJs. And this is a club where it's a big club. People are coming out with bottles with flares or whatever. But then you go behind the decks, and all you have, or the booth, the DJ booth, and all you had was a mixer. And I think it was a laptop. Or was it just a mixer? But in essence, every DJ that came to that club, whether it was a man or a woman, had to bring their own controller.
Wow.
And she was the only woman on the bill. And she started her career actually with a controller. So
that's interesting. That's very interesting.
And now, like if you have a controller, you can get an iRig 2 and connect your controller to your phone, and you can stream to your phone, through your phone, actually. So I think when we start thinking about what the effects are going to be, or whatever, the one thing that I would say is be creative. Nothing is off the cards, you know. Everything and anything is possible. Use what you have. And also, I don't think we should be thinking of streaming or delivering content online as like a stopgap. This is our life now. It's our life. Like, this is, you know, for as long as we don't have a vaccine, we need to start thinking of ways in which we're going to be delivering digital content, and how digital becomes part of who we are as creatives, as musicians, as whatever, you know. Like,
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with you. Someone, is asking me what are my thoughts. Okay, my thoughts is technology is created to make our lives easier. You know, it's the same debate as people who say, you know, driving an automatic car is not real driving. You know, like, no, you know, technology is there to work for you. And, you know, I know purists love the old, they're stuck in their ways, but I'm a futurist. I believe in using technology to advantage, because also with using controllers and all these softwares, they allow DJs to be more creative. That's why, you know, modern DJs can play 5 or, you know, 4 songs at the same time, because they can, you know, the software mixes songs for them so that they can be more creative. Old school DJs are still very rigid and boring, you know, they still need to listen to the song, cue it in, and you know what I mean? So it's technology, man, you know, it makes your life easier. And I think if especially we can do it well, then why not? Yo, we've got 3 minutes left. I have so many questions, but it's fine.
Why don't you ask me the questions?
No, because, you know, I enjoy your answers, you know, because you're schooling me, so let's go.
I need media training. That's what
No, but that's really good, actually.
I need someone to be like, no, answer the question only.
No, so Afro tech, like the songs that you're on that I enjoy is Afro house and Afro tech. What do you think is the future, or what do you think is the next trend? Because now it's Amapiano. We see DJs are pushing Afro tech, but I don't know. So what do you think is the next movement that's gonna be the hit?
The hit. I mean, if you're talking about Afro tech, like it's like the sort of underground versions of it, because I consider music like Prince KB and like Heavy K Afro house, right? So that's like the pop version. And then like the sort of like the underground stuff, which is what I love and I do, which is not to say I wouldn't do the KB stuff. I think there's a lot of room for growth. You know, like there's a lot of guys and girls actually, who are making really amazing music, you know, like great sort of Afro inspired, you know, with the combination of techno, with the combination of sort of more aggressive sounds, which is like really great. I love that. I think there's only more room for growth in that, you know. Amapiano, of course, we know is taking over. And there'll be another trend. I actually don't know what that trend will be. I don't think Amapiano has reached its peak yet, because we're just now seeing it starting to crest over into the US and the UK especially. You know, I mean, even now with Shasha's BET nomination, and then you see Shoma Josie there, of course, you know. So, and you know that Gom, I hope that I pronounced it correctly, is still a contender. I don't know how people say that it's dead, but that stuff is not actually.
Gom is throwing internationally. Okay, 59.
It's not. It's bigger than Afro. So I don't understand.
50 seconds remaining. Any thoughts?
But, huh?
50 seconds remaining. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else you want to add? Because it's going to cut us now.
Okay, anything I want to add is the future of Afro depends on how much we decide to own. We need to start owning things, record labels, entertainment properties, management agencies. We need to start owning the value chain.
Well, you know, look, it's been an interesting conversation. 20 seconds remaining, and I really enjoyed it. And Thank you to
Thank you
everybody.
for having me.
It's been a pleasure. We'll engage further on the topic offline. And yeah, man, good luck with your career and keep creating good music. We really love it. And yeah, thank you so much and good night.
Thank you.